Hello and welcome to the very first episode in this series of broadcasts called Body Talks. We have lost somebody already as we start in, but I'm sure she will come back in. So in the meantime, I will introduce you to our other panelists. So here I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So I've got Michael and Helena here. Danny is going to hopefully join us in a second. So Michael, welcome to the Body Talk stage. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. Here she is now. And also tell us why it is that this subject is interesting to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So I'm the autoimmune coach. I work with people who have multiple sclerosis, giving them the confidence for everyday life through diet, stress management, and lifestyles that they can live to their full potential. And the reason that this subject is so important is as I have multiple sclerosis and a lot of people out there and a lot of people, they deal with other issues, whatever they are with their body or whatever that issue is, that all of our bodies talk different to us and we can all learn something from someone. So it's important to me because when you learn how your body talks to you, that's when you can start growing and getting to a spot to where you start healing and you get to where you want to be in life.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. So that is Michael Villines, also known as the Maverick, I believe.
How wonderful.
And now we have Helena Holrick. So Helena, tell us a little bit about your wonderfulness and also why this subject is so interesting to you.
I enjoy this invitation to talk about my wonderfulness. How lovely. So my name is Helena Holrick, and I'm a business coach and mentor, and much of that is actually centered around personal progress. So what really is important to me is how we trust ourselves to take on whatever venture we are actually doing. Now, my speciality happens to be business, but in life and business, they kind of marry together. So how we do one thing is how we do everything. So my topic happens to be business, but my focus is very much on the person themselves. And what I find is that business, becoming an entrepreneur or running your own business as a business owner is one of the most personal growth things that you can do. So with that, there is a requirement to really trust yourself and trust everything about how you do what you do. And trust for me is the core component of anything that you throw yourself into. So that happens, and trust happens on a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level. So when people get stuck in running their businesses, and the sun is about to tell me I'm wonderful as well, so I might just have to do a little bit of jigging around, which is fun. But when people get stuck, I will usually look at how they're speaking to themselves around their bodies, around their capabilities, around their capacity, and how they speak to themselves, and particularly how they berate themselves in the body, because a lot of people fall into that as a habitual pattern, and it doesn't need to be, is the thing that I find erodes trust more than anything. So weirdly, in order to help people fix their businesses, I actually help them be kinder to about how they talk to themselves, particularly at that physical environment level, aka the house we live in. So yeah, I'm quite excited to hear how this discussion is going to go, because it's a very passionate piece for me and something that most people don't really look at when they're thinking about growing their businesses. How do you talk to your body? How does that relate to your business? Well, it really does.
I will tap into a bit of that later as well. So thank you very much, Helena, and welcome back, Danny. I'm glad you made it back into the room. So here we have Danielle Ajanta, and what I've said is I'm just inviting you to introduce yourself, a bit about what you do, and why it is this subject is of interest to you, really. So Danny, welcome to the stage and welcome back to the room.
Hi, thank you, Gina. Yes. My name is Danielle Ajanta. Most people call me Danny, though, and I'm a yogini, tantrika, healing guide and coach, and I'm deeply passionate about supporting women in remembering their true power and reclaiming the gift of the sacred feminine. So for me, this topic is very, very personal and a huge part of my work. 10 years ago, I had a complete health collapse and was diagnosed with the autoimmune condition rheumatoid arthritis, and that set me off on a massive healing mission to find healing, and took me to many weird and wonderful places. But the one of the main parts of the journey was realizing how massively disconnected from my body I was, and having that as a reclamation journey of learning to re-inhabit my body, talking to my body, listening to my body, and releasing all the blocks to doing that. So I think society, we are conditioned as soon as we're born, actually, as soon as we come out of the womb, to disconnect from our bodies and not really be with them. And so part of my work is really helping women get back in touch, and through that really experiencing and enjoying the gifts that the body has to give, because it's amazing. So that's me.
Thank you, and thank you, and wow. And I feel like so I just introduced myself. Anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Gina Dallison. I have a coaching business where I help and support people who have been diagnosed or in that space of about to be diagnosed to some frightening illness. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing, as we've seen here, and just some of the conversations that we've had. There's 3 people in the room that are living with a long-term, incurable, so we're told, illness, and we're finding ways of dealing with that. So it's really a hopeful place to be. And yeah, thank you all. Michael, I've met on my journey with multiple sclerosis, and we're very much on a similar path where we believe we can heal ourselves. Danny, I've met networking, and just she spoke to me in the way that she describes her connection with her body, and that's something that I am working towards and learning about. And Helena, all the stuff that she said is totally true. She's been my life and business coach for I've worked out about 4 years, and yeah, and keeps me going and through all that stuff. So so thank you all for being here and talking about this this wonderful subject, because I talk about it a lot. You listen to your body, and I don't always find it an easy thing to do. I'm sort of I'm listening. What is my body trying to tell me? So how can we listen to our body, and what does that actually mean? So again, I've never done a process like this, so feel free to jump in, but obviously we don't want to talk over each other. So if anybody's got anything they particularly want to say, or they want to jump in, maybe just put your hand up, and I can make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak. And if nobody says, I'll just pick on one of you and we can talk about it. So how does that sound as a way of going forward?
Sounds great.
Excellent. So how then, I'll start with you, Michael, because you're sitting top on my screen. How did you first learn to talk to your body and to listen to it?
For me, it was just learning what all the different signals it's telling me are saying. So whether it's something with your diet, that maybe you ate something and all of a sudden you're feeling those muscle spasms, or maybe it's some more pain, or sometimes I'll have way too much inflammation. So things like I do red light and near infrared light, and I do a cold shower, and that helps lower the inflammation. Or maybe there's too much stress going on and you deal with the stress, or some breath work really helps you out, and it gets your body to where it's functioning like it should. But you listen to everything that it says and you go, okay, here I need to make an adjustment. And you make that adjustment, and then you move forward from there. and then you just really take it day by day and you listen to what it's saying, and then you take the different tools that you have and you work with your body so that it's operating at its full potential.
So from what I'm taking from that, and please feel free to add your bits, is noticing when you've got stresses from outside, when you've got things coming from outside, like whatever you're eating and whatever you're doing, then it's noticing how your body is responding to whatever it is that you're doing. Was that be right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Helena? What's that?
It's really interesting because you know, sort of I think we are all, again, humans in bodies, souls in bodies. We have this housing, this casing, and our job is really to be pattern spotting the whole time, you know, sort of like, is this my norm? Is that my norm? You know, sort of, and when the body actually goes, excuse me, something's wrong, that's a pattern interrupt that kind of comes in, that goes, my body isn't actually working in the way that it is. And so responding to Michael, and I really love what you say, what I'm taking for that is there's a cause effect response piece. And what we have a tendency to do, what I see people do a lot, is to look at the symptom. I don't know, I banged my elbow, or I got a bruised knee, or as you say, you know, sort of like I ate something and suddenly my tummy is going, excuse me, what was that? Thank you very much, but no thank you. And so there's a symptom that happens. And a lot of the time, you know, sort of in the culture that we live in, particularly Western kind of world, we have a tendency to go to a pharmaceutical thing that supports, you know, sort of like that will eliminate that, which stops us doing a lot of the listening that we actually could do. So it is a response, by all means. You know, you can take a headache pill for the headache that you've got. But actually, what if there was a different way of doing it? And as Michael says, it's that listening too, and actually going, okay, well, what are the different responses that I could actually, you know, sort of take here? In my case, I will always go to an acupuncturist, you know, sort of, because that just makes sense, because what kind of headache is this headache? You know, operating with that curiosity is the piece for me. So there's a symptom, and we can either go straight to looking at the response to it, or we could slow it down enough to go, oh, here's a symptom. I wonder what the cause was. So we now have a cause for a symptom. And sometimes that's emotional, sometimes that's mental, sometimes that's spiritual, sometimes we just don't know, but it's still there. So there's an acknowledgement that goes on in there. And then on the other side of that symptom, there's an effect of that symptom. And then we can choose a response that we actually have. So for me, there's a real lovely kind of thing that we can do, which is operate with curiosity and go, what is the pattern that's present right here? And what is it that I can do by slowing down? I can go, the symptom's here. Where in the body is it? What is it trying to tell me? And where's that coming from? So learning to listen at that level by slowing it down, to then actually choose the response that we have because of the effect that's going on. So I could choose to sit in the headache instead and go, hey, what is that? And what could I do? As Michael was just saying, what could I do with this headache that allows it to abate, or that allows it to kind of dissipate, or indeed allows it to ramp up so it disappears, because I get the learning from it. So I love what you've brought up, Michael, around this. What if we were pattern spotting and then identifying the cause effect, but the symptom cause and then the effect response that we can actually have?
Yeah, that is, when you talk about the response is usually to go and let's see if we can get rid of this pain or this symptom or whatever's coming up, which links in, Danny, to what you were saying right from birth, how we're like disconnected to our bodies. And we're taught more and more, aren't we? We get something wrong with us, we go to the doctors, or we get a pill, or we take something. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been taught as a child to say, oh, you've got a stomach ache, just sit with that and ask your body, what it needs. And of course we haven't, have we? Because unless our parents were maybe yogi people and or living in indigenous tribes probably, then we're living in the Western world where we've got, hey, you don't have to live with headaches anymore, you don't have to live with indigestion, you can take these pills. So yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so Danny, so you talked about the disconnect early on, so what's your take on that?
Yeah, exactly. We're conditioned to, it's more like we reside over our bodies rather than reside within them and with them, and in harmony with them. So when we have pain, it's immediately, there is a rejection of that pain, a resistance of that pain, and we just want to stop it. And that's what we're also conditioned to do. Pain is seen as such a negative thing, and that the very word pain. And one of when we have pain, it's immediately, there is a rejection of that pain, a resistance. Why is that happening? That's weird.
I don't know.
I was like, whoa.
Were you actually talking then?
No, it was like echoing. So it was like on a delay. So maybe it's on a delay.
Oh right, okay.
Anyway, pain.
Pain, yeah.
So one thing that was a beautiful kind of reframe for me was removing the label pain from things that I was feeling in my body, and actually naming them as sensation instead. If this is just a sensation that I'm feeling, so it takes away the negative connotation. And then to kind of follow on from what Helena said, which I absolutely love, the word curiosity. And when I was sitting last night and just thinking, just allowing things to come through, one of the main things that came through was curiosity. Can we approach the body with curiosity? And I think this symptom cause and effect is such an amazing piece. I would even take it a step further back and get really, really honest about, do we actually really want to hear what the body has got to say? Because most of the time, well, not most of the time, but it may be actually not very comfortable to hear what it's got to say. And our default is to ignore. So it's, and just to, like my own personal story, when I started to connect with my womb and my yoni. So in the Sanskrit, in Tantric world, yoni is the word that we use for genitalia, female genitalia. It means a sacred space. When I really started to connect and listen, she was angry, and I mean really, really angry, and it was uncomfortable to listen to that. And so it's totally, it's about a recognition actually, and really being honest. Am I ready? And am I really willing to hear what my body has got to say? So,
wow,
I love that.
And so my confusion, I suppose, in all this, and maybe it's just I'm not 100% ready, because the real motivation for me doing this series is because obviously I'm living with multiple sclerosis, and I feel there's a bit of a disconnect, certainly between my legs and my life, I guess. And yeah, how do you get to a space where you could, how did you get to a space where you knew your yoni was angry?
How did I get to a space when I knew? It was allowing. So really being prepared to be with the body and sitting with it in a space of complete openness, and not, again, it's like this residing over rather than residing in. So really allowing ourselves to drop out of the head and just allowing whatever needs to come through. And two of the pieces that are important here are movement and sound, because often we expect the body to talk to us how we would talk. And that's not, there are ways that the body prefers to express. So allowing movement, and one of the most powerful things is sound. And as a culture, we are not very good at making sound that is not within our control, and that sounds that we judge as sounding ugly or whatever. So again, it's coming back to this allowing. Can we allow ourselves to go to those really messy, raw, horrible, ugly places and allow that to be expressed through the body?
Wow.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah, it does. I can feel that in the body.
Yeah, it is really powerful. You know, I do something called womb voice activation, and it's holding space for women to really drop in to their wombs and allow it just to sound. And the noises that come out can be primal, and like they're so primal, and you know, from someone listening, it's like, oh my God, this is not glamorous, this is not beautiful, but it is so powerful. And if we allow the body to speak, it has so much to say, but it's not necessarily pretty all the time. So
I think that is potentially part of the challenge here. And Michael, you probably come across a lot of people as you do kind of the guiding and the coaching that you do, but to hold space for yourself and or hold space for another as they see everything, you know, I'm in real appreciation that we are both ands. You know, I am both mean and kind. I am both ugly and beautiful. I am both and, you know, sort of, and that goes, you know, I am smart and I am stupid, you know, sort of it actually, what if we embraced all of it? And so, you know, sort of I think of the people who are space holders for someone who's coming into this journey of listening, and either us as ourselves, giving ourselves the space and the time that might even allow for this language of the body to kind of come through. So, you know, creating a space where it would feel safe enough for a sound like that to come out, or for the movement, the tiny movement that I can only make today, and kind of be in celebration of that piece. That I feel like that's actually the urging that actually comes in, and that, you know, people like us, all four of us, hold space for that with people all the time. I mean, Michael, you must see that a lot, that you need to help people just create the space where they can even listen.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, because I know recently I do a lot of things on social media. I made a post about my most recent post was about the old you and the new you. I talked about how a lot of people, they talk about how the old version of them is dead and they can't do all this different, all the things that they used to be able to do. But then I talked about how that new you, that could be better than the old you. And a lot of people forget that early on in your process, that the most important phase of you healing, getting to a better spot, is the grieving process. And it's getting used to where, hey, because the new you can be better than the old you, even though that might look different. You might not be running for 5 miles a day, but you might be doing something similar to that, or whatever that is. 5 miles is just just a example. But when a lot of people, they forget that there's that grieving process and that you have to go through that. When you go through that, like the sounds that your body makes with the womb and connecting with that, or whatever that is. When you go through that, a lot of the times we look at that as something that's ugly and not beautiful, but whatever process you had to go through to heal that, that's really beautiful in and of itself. It's just, it might not look like a rose or a rose garden or a flower garden or whatever, but everybody's garden is different, and whatever made you, whatever ended up getting those seeds to plant, to where when you get after that garden, then all that's watering what is going to come next.
Yeah, I love the garden analogy and the idea that actually, again, it's the perception of what is beautiful. You know, everyone would probably agree, you look at a rose and it is beautiful, and maybe if you looked at a dandelion, that wouldn't be so much so. But actually, when you get to the depths of what a dandelion looks like and what it does, because it's such a powerful plant, isn't it, that keeps going no matter what, and it's got deep roots that go right down, it's got healing properties. And so it's perception. Okay, it may not look great in a wedding bouquet, but it has, there's other, exactly what you said, Michael, the old you doesn't have to be in any way worse than the new you. The new you is just turning into a different type of flower with different types of different properties. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Just because we can't do the things that we once did with ease doesn't mean to say our life isn't. And that's really what I took. Doesn't mean to say your life can't be awesome in many other ways. Oh, I'm feeling a bit emotional at that, just because exactly that. It's and the whole process, I think, about reconnecting with your body, you know, unfortunately it does quite often take an illness, doesn't it, before we go down this path. And that's what I talk about, illness being a gift as well, because it is, if we see it as that, it's the perception piece as well. So,
I think there's something about getting out of the way as well, you know, sort of we come in, and again, whether you believe this or not, it's certainly what's true for me. You know, as a soul, I've been given this casing, this housing to sort of play in, to kind of go and explore the world in. And I think we have a tendency to ignore the wisdom of the body, that you know, sort of like we have a container, but we think of it as just a container, you know, sort of that, and that actually our minds, we give our power over to our minds quite a lot. You know, there is a saying around, you know, don't make the mind a master. It is actually only part of what's going on. We actually have three brains. You know, we have a head brain, a heart brain, and a gut brain. It's the same kind of tissue that actually sits in those, but we have a tendency as humans to make the mind, because it's the most loud and the active, like a 3-year-old child, you know, sort of, that actually kind of gets the attention. So the more introspective parts of us don't get as much of a look in, because they're just sitting there quietly. The heart's quietly providing you with intuition if you choose to listen to it. The gut's going, hey, there's something going on that we need to pay attention to. But they don't actually kind of get as much of a look in as our minds do. And so the wisdom that we have, or the wisdom that we are here to bring, you know, the thing that we actually do when we have, you know, when I work with, and I do work with quite a lot of people who are slowed down in some way by something within their bodies. You know, sort of like, and I always kind of make room for, well, that still doesn't mean you can't actually operate within your own rhythm and run a business, run a life, run a household, because all of those are difficult and hard things. But we can rely on the wisdom of the body, using the head, the heart, and the gut, and actually start to really listen to that wisdom a little bit more, and kind of switch the dial. So if you can imagine sort of a music mixing desk, you know, we could actually turn down the mind a little bit and turn up the wisdom of the heart. You know, what is this limitation that's suddenly been imposed on me? I don't know, I break my arm, or I have something more chronic kind of happen. What is that now facilitating in me. Maybe I needed to slow down enough to actually be able to listen enough to be able to actually blossom into the garden that I'm supposed to kind of be showing out in the world. Or maybe it's actually that I've lost connective touch with that whole, you know, back to Michael's, I've just eaten something, you know, I could ignore that I've just eaten spicy food and that, you know, actually my body really didn't like it. You know, what if I got really sensitive to the wisdom of my body using all three of my brains? That then allows me to do a much deeper, much more connected listening that then allows me to go out in the world in a more holistic way. And I do mean that with a W at the front of holistic, as well as the wholeness that actually kind of sits within what I'm doing. So there's an invitation for us to, when the body slows us down enough, there is you know, what if we all started looking at that as an invitation to listen to a different brain and or the combination of all three? Hey, what has my head got to say about this? What has my heart got to say about this? What has my gut got to say about this? Now you have 3 bits of information, which is better than 1 bit of information.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it goes back to what you were saying as well, Danny, about the idea of pain and changing that to the sensation. I like that. I like the idea of, and getting curious about what the sensation is. So actually, and with multiple sclerosis and the same, I think similar with RA, it's a collective of symptoms. It's not just, people don't experience it the same way. So it's getting curious about those particular symptoms. And if we can really learn, I guess, to tap into that and stay present with that. And I think the idea of just tapping into the 3 parts of you is certainly a great starting place, isn't it? How long does that take, just to sit with it for a minute? And there is something around, isn't there, if you sit with an emotion for, it doesn't even take a minute, does it? Because it's most of the time it's our dislike for being uncomfortable that makes us reach for, whether it's a pharmaceutical or whether it's a crutch of some kind or whether it's something else. But actually, if we can just sit with, I'm not feeling, you know, that might be an emotional pain, it might be a physical pain, but even just sitting with the pain it's not as painful as we sort of make it out. Yeah.
There's a phrase I was taught a long time ago, which is simple awareness is often curative. So simple awareness is often
like
curative.
that, yeah.
And it really supports and holds this idea of, oh, if I sit with this for 30 seconds, if I just allowed myself to sit with this, and there's a saying, I have a beautiful little book which is just lots of little sayings that kind of work in here. And one of these cards says, and I was just looking for it, it says, pick the right uncomfortable. And it actually is just this whole thing of, actually, what if I chose to give 30 seconds to this uncomfortableness and just experience it, so that I can see how or if it shifts just by me paying attention to it. In the same way, I'm back to a little child, you know, sort of like in the same way that, you know, if a child falls over and sees that no one saw them, you know, if you've ever seen kind of a child do that, they go, right, well, I'm just going to dust myself off. But if they see that someone saw them, they then go straight into, you know, and sort of really, in order to get the response, to milk that response. What if we did that for ourselves and actually sat in the uncomfortable for 30 seconds and just go, I can handle this for 30 seconds. I can handle this for 30 seconds. Let me see what happens. And then allowing that simple awareness that comes from doing that to go, hang on a minute, I'm still here. I didn't die. One of my best mentors ever, she's no longer present with us, but her voice is in my head the whole time. She said, she looked at me straight in the eye once and she went, you're never given more than you can handle. Do you know how you'd know? And I was like, no. She said, you'd be dead. I was like, it's a good point, well made. you know, sort of like, and so actually, what if
Yeah,
I could
that's
handle this
lovely.
for 30 seconds? What if I could just handle this in 30-second increments, even if it's so painful? What if the pain has information from me? And if I could handle it for 30 seconds and say, okay, head, what are you saying about this? Handle it for another 30 seconds just to actually really see, okay, heart, what have you got for me? And then handle it for another 30 seconds and then go back to the gut and just go, what have you got for me? Now I have more information. I'm a different me than I was a minute and a half ago.
And you didn't die.
I didn't die. I'm still here. And sometimes I do need to do the thing where it's like, yep, still here. Must be able to handle it.
That's lovely. I love that. I love that quote. It's yeah, that idea as well. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, Danny, what did you?
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Yeah, I think Helen's really touched on our resistance towards discomfort, any type of discomfort, and I kind of want to pick up on what Michael said when he was saying about these, like the grief and all this stuff can be beautiful. And I know I was saying like these sounds are ugly, etc. And I was talking from the perception of our culture and our society. And so it comes back to this changing of perception. And Helena, you mentioned, you know, I'm beautiful and ugly, and I'm, you know, peaceful and angry, and I was like, oh, that's very tantric of you, because in the tantric, you know, the whole tantric philosophy is that everything is divine. Absolutely everything is divinity expressing itself. So, you know, all these things that we judge as horrible, or, you know, we have this resistance to, it is divine in itself. So if you can see this, you know, if you're deeply in grief, that is still part of the universal consciousness, divinity, that greater power, however you want to, however you can connect with that. It's part of that, and that can help to remove this resistance and help with this more willingness to sit with, as Helena described, you know, these three pieces coming up. But I just wanted to also pick up on this, on the wisdom piece that was mentioned about the innate wisdom of the body. And this is something, again, which I feel especially with the feminine, with women, like the amount of wisdom that we have been conditioned to override. So one example would be the wisdom of the cycles, of our cyclical nature, of our menstrual patterns, and that there is so much wisdom and so much power when we start to really learn about those, and how we can go with the flow of that and what our body needs at different times of our cycle. And it can be totally transformative. And people, you know, who suffer from deeply painful periods, it can completely transform them. But we are so conditioned as women to ignore and power through and take painkillers, and it's like, oh, you know, just, it's an inconvenience. So there's so much to unpack around the conditionings of society with regards to rejecting the wisdom of our body and ignoring it.
I think that's what you say about the women's cycle, exactly that. It's almost a rite of passage that you get to a certain age and you get on the pill, and you get a contraceptive, and now they've got more contraceptives that like even get rid of the period altogether. I don't know quite how that works, but now, knowing what I know now, it just feels, oh my God, we're giving. I had an implant in my arm for 8 years, which just stopped my periods, and that was great because I didn't have a period. But yeah, it's not helpful, is it? I don't think we're not teaching our children and our young girls and men, it's, you know, it's the same. We'll just power through. We'll get rid of that inconvenience of a bleed every month, even though obviously our body's designed to do that. And when it comes with pain as well, and the high emotions that it can do sometimes, again, the pain thing, we don't want it, and and nobody does. Nobody, yeah, let's have some pain, it'll be fab. But again, if we could change our perception of what the pain is telling us, and imagine having classes at school where girls could get together and actually explore and get curious and talk to each other, because we don't do that either. And, you know, we don't, I know there is some things in schools now where they talk, well, yeah, they're taught whatever they're taught about the body, and they're maybe named the anatomy, but we don't have real conversations about what it feels like to have, you know, what it feels like to have a penis as opposed to what it feels like to have a vagina. Those conversations don't take place without it being really awkward, and we're just missing so much opportunity, I think. You know,
and it's still all those anatomical lessons or education is still from a place of disconnection. It's not coming from a place of reverence or a deep respect for the wisdom of the body. So it's and it's not a, you know, I'm talking about the feminine here and women, but it's equally as important for men to know these things. And men are also victims of this patriarchal system, which shuts their emotions down. You know, a little boy crying, only, you know, girls cry, you know, only little girls cry, immediately conditioned to shut down their emotions, that it is not manly to cry, and all these things that are so damaging and limit us in our ability to really inhabit our bodies wholly and holistically.
It's really interesting. I love this idea, and you know, sort of, I'm just putting it out to every single one of us here. You said the words power through, Danny, and I love this idea of, you know, the choice that's available to us. I'm always going to look for what's the choice available that is the expansion. And actually, even with the natural rhythms, with where we actively sort of sit, whatever gender we are, or, you know, sort of whatever genitalia we have, this idea of powering through or powering down is actually the powerful choice that I'm hearing. So, you know, at any point I have this, you know, sort of, if someone is caught in, today I can't move my legs very well, okay, well, I could power through and I could make them do something, or I could power down. You know, in our society, this idea of turning the light switches off, although at the moment with the energy kind of as it is, many more of us are actually being shown that we could power down, you know, sort of like, what if our environment is actually showing us that? But this idea of powering down as a choice that we could make, and just sitting in it for however long, you know, sort of, again, to have this shift of perspective, to have this communion with the body that allows us to then actually go, okay, and once I've powered down, because we all know that once you've rested, the energy shifts within us, and we have more ability to do something else, you know, sort of, I'm sure that all of us see this all the time, right? Power through or power down.
Yeah, I think at least in the USA, that like out in other countries, like pharmaceutical countries, like it doesn't matter what there is out there, that there's a pill for this, there's a pill for that, and we're taught from a very young age, whatever you're going through, just numb that and don't experience that and don't go through that. And we talked about, like, men, I forget who it was, there was a 4-star general, somebody who was up there, who went, the man who's not crying, that's the guy I'm scared of. Because we're so taught that there's a place where, hey, you have to push through being the protector, whatever you have to go through, but there's also the stage where it's okay to cry with whatever you're going through. And when we're always taught to numb whatever you're going through, oh, here's a pill for that, here's a pill for that, it'll take care of whatever whatever issue that you have, that when we're taught to ignore everything that our bodies are telling us from the emotional, because we're more than just physical beings, we're spiritual beings as well. And that when you keep on ignoring that, then you're ignoring that other element and that other side and ended up seeing a video on social media, and they talked about the heart and about how the heart has the same special cells that your brain has. And that when it comes to a decision, you're like, oh, this is dangerous, whatnot, your brain goes yes or no. But when you connect to your heart and you press down on your heart, that it gives you a different connection there, and your heart's more connected to things than your brain is. So yesterday I did a voice scan with somebody, and when I went through the music that helped me, that's supposed to help you heal, one thing that I did throughout the entire time was I just connected to my heart, because they talked about how you look at all the shamans and everybody, shamans, Buddhists, whoever else, they all touch their heart because they know there's a special connection there that draws you to that body part. And we all touched on this briefly, but your brain has a brain, your heart has a brain, and your gut has a brain. And when you get in tune with what your body's telling you, and it'll take a little bit more work to get in tune with your gut, especially when it's out of whack or whatever. But when you get in tune with all three of those and the cells that are in all of those, that's when really crazy good stuff starts happening in your body, and you just get in tune with each part of you.
Wow. Yes.
It's interesting. I think there's I want to bring up affirmations, because, you know, sort of part of this talk is how do we talk to our bodies, and affirmations, something that we say to ourselves on a regular basis, that, you know, because affirmations can be, not that I believe there's a good and bad, but, you know, sort of
helpful or not helpful.
Powerful or not helpful, much better definition. Thank you. I'm going to borrow that from here on in. So with this idea that what we say repeatedly is what we end up believing, and that structure then ends up sort of really setting up our lives, and that includes our physicality as well. Really, what we can choose the words that we use in our heads. So, you know, sort of I've dissed the brain a little bit. I actually love the brain. I think it's a fantastic thing, and I love mine, you know, sort of I just need to not give it all the attention, you know, sort of other things need to be doing that. But one of the things that the brain does is it does repetition really well. And so the words that we repeatedly use, we become, you know, sort of that's really the thinking that sits behind an affirmation. So choosing the words, or even just noticing, you know, how do we talk to our body? My hope is that we all talk to our bodies with kindness, or at least for the majority of the time. It tends not to be true for a lot of us, and particularly for those in pain. You can berate that pain, you know, sort of as well as the body. So it might be berating the pain, it might be berating the body. But actually, what if we can start to embrace or learn to actually speak with more kindness? So affirmations are a great way of doing that. And so, you know, sort of whether it is, and Gina, I think you did one of these in your Monday Moments today, you know, every day and every way I'm getting better and better, right? Your brain can't argue with that. So and that for me is and that's what I wanted to really make sure and bring up, you know, never say something to your brain that isn't actually true, even if it's a millimeter true, or like, you know, the tiniest sense of true, something that can't be argued with. Every day in every way I'm getting better and better. Well, that may well be true. It might not be better in the body, it might be better in my emotions, it might be better in my mental state, but every day in every way I'm getting better and better. I think that was Eric Sarte. So, you know, sort of
it was Emile Coué, apparently. Emile Coué, I discovered.
Thank you very much. Well, there you go. That's me beautifully corrected, right? And so every day and every way I'm getting more and more knowledgeable, you know, sort of there's a whole kind of piece that you can actively do. And even just having a soundtrack of health, of healthy thinking, of healthy loving kindness inside of you as a go-to can be a really wonderful thing. You know, sort of one of my best go-tos is I expand in love, success and abundance every day as I inspire others around me to do the same.
Nice.
Nothing in me can actually argue with that.
No, because that's
And
what you do.
yeah, so I invite anyone who's listening who isn't necessarily being as kind as they could be, you know, to actively start being kinder about the body and the casing that we are in as such.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. And exactly that. And I'm loving this little mantra that I discovered last week, and it's just such a short, and it then gets me looking for things where I'm getting better and better, and the things that maybe aren't getting better in my mind, I can just say, yeah, well, we'll ignore that. Yeah. But as we come to the end of our hour, it's like I'll just do a quick round. Thank you all. This has been an amazing conversation. I knew it was going to be amazing anyway, but it's even more amazing than my imagination could imagine. So Michael, just to give us a line or two just to finish, what would you like to end with?
I'd say my dad growing up would always have a saying, what I think I become, what I say I do, what I do, and that's who I'll become. And then I think I got those last two mixed up, but that cycle to where your thoughts, whatever you're thinking, that depending upon what they are, you can go two directions with it, because everybody talks about the 1%, like work on getting 1% better, but there's also the other side of it where you can also get 1% worse if you're not getting better, or if you're thinking that, and that your thoughts, they're extremely powerful, and that they can really help you out or they can really hurt you. But when you focus on moving forward and the healing and connecting with yourself more and more, then that's when, going back to the garden, that flower, it opens up, and then you start becoming the best version of yourself.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. So this is Michael Villines, and I will share everybody's links in the bio when I suss it out. So thank you for joining us, Michael. And Helena, leave us with your last little bit of wisdom.
It's an invitation. It's always an invitation to choice. You know, whenever you're speaking with me, I'm always going to look for what's the choice. And so really, I suppose I'm going to leave you with a question, which is, what's the kindest thought I could be having right now? What's the kindest action I could take right now? And the right now in acknowledgement of whatever it is that's going on for you. Or what's the kindest feeling I could be feeling? So if I'm feeling a bit mean to myself, actually, what's the next feeling up from that would be less, you know, that would be more kind in that way? So what's the kindest thought, action, or feeling that I could have right now, that I could choose right now? That really helps us talk to our bodies at all three of those levels.
Beautiful. Thank you. So this is Helena Holrick from Helping You Shine. So thank you very much. And Danny, definitely not least, but last on my circle. What's your little bit of wisdom?
Yeah, it's connected to what Helena was saying around how, you know, talking to the body. This whole thing was about talking to the body. And one thing that I would mention as an end piece is the piece about gratitude. And can you actually show gratitude for your body? Can you be grateful for everything that it does do? And because especially when we are in discomfort, whether that's physical or emotional, when we have these sensations that we would prefer not to have, there is a tendency to reject the body entirely. And one really, if you could take one step towards building a better relationship with your body, so it's easier to talk to it, is to start talking to it with gratitude. And every morning I would invite you, can you start, even when you're lying in bed, when you first wake up, can you just be grateful? Like, thank you for keeping me alive through the night. Thank you for all those cells that have done whatever they do in all their amazing ways. You know, can you give gratitude to your body? And it because it's listening to everything that you say, and that is going to start transforming the relationship that you have with it.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. And that's Danielle Ajanta. And again, I will share everybody's links because they're all amazing. And I love this conversation today. Thank you so much.
I could talk for another hour. It's so
well, we could have gone on.
Right.
We'll have to have a day's version where people can. But it is so important, and there is so many different ways of doing it. And I love the fact that we end with, you know, the way that we think, going back to our brain, but using the brain to empower and love the body.
Beautiful.
It's and we'll end with that. So every day in every way we are getting better and better. So on that now, I will end.
Thank you, Gina. Thank
Really.
you.